Good evening. Hi, and welcome from all of us here at the Center for Creative Photography. If you're new to us, we are part of the Arizona Arts Division at the University of Arizona. I'm Anne Breckenridge Barrett. I'm Director of the Center for Creative Photography and Associate Vice President for the Arts. Tonight, I am absolutely delighted to be in conversation with photojournalist David Hume Kennerly. It's crucial to first acknowledge that the University of Arizona sits on the original homelands of indigenous peoples who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We recognize and acknowledge the people, culture, and history that make up our community. I want to extend my sincerest thanks to our Directors Circle for their vital support of CCP, and also to our CCP members. I hope you will all consider becoming a member or renewing your membership with any and every cultural institution that you favor this fall. I also want to give a special and warm welcome to our friends and the co-presenter of tonight's event, Bank of America. We are deeply grateful to Bank of America for their generosity and their steadfast support of the CCP, without which events like this evening would not be possible. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Bank of America's Tucson Market President, Adriana Congremero.
Thank you, Annie. Good evening. I'm Adriana Congremero, Tucson Market President for Bank of America. As Market President, I lead efforts to make financial lives better in our community and guide our efforts to make a positive impact in Tucson. We are excited to be back again as sponsors for this wonderful event. It's hard to believe it's been a year since we were last together, where the community had a chance to see some of David's photography and hear what it was like to be in the room. Although we cannot be together in person today, it's exciting to know that due to the virtual nature of tonight's event, we have people tuning in from around the country and even from around the world. David has been a longtime partner of Bank of America through our Global Ambassadors program and in partnership for many years, working closely with our senior executives. He has also captured important moments at various events and throughout the years. Tonight, I'm proud to celebrate the continued partnership with David, as well as the partnership between the University of Arizona and the Center for Creative Photography. Because at Bank of America, we believe in the power of the arts. The arts help economies thrive, educate, and enrich societies and create greater cultural understanding, all of which you will get to experience as you learn more about the programs and the exhibits that the Center for Creative Photography has and through David's work. You will see that David has witnessed history firsthand, and I'm excited to hear some of those experiences that he will share with us tonight. And he'll highlight some of the most important cultural and political issues of our time. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and tonight you'll have the opportunity to hear David discuss the importance of photography in culture and the ways that it bears witness for complex issues, evokes emotion, and leads to a greater understanding and knowledge of our world. In closing, I'd like to thank David, Annie Breckenridge Barrett, and the wonderful team at the Center for Creative Photography for making tonight's event possible. And lastly, to all of you, from my home to yours, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Adriana. And thank you again to Bank of America. We are thrilled to have you be a part of tonight's event. David Hume Kennerly, 1 year later, presented by Bank of America, is part of our fall programming series titled Photojournalism 2020. It explores photography as a force in political life and how photographs influence us as a society. If you were fortunate enough to join us in late September, we spoke with photographer and educator Charisse May. I was grateful to have been in conversation with Charisse, and the recording of our talk is now available on CCP's YouTube channel. Our last installment of the series will be on November 17th at 5 p.m. Magnum photographer Susan Meiselas will be in conversation with anthropologist Dr. Rukin Siegel about their mutual projects on the Kurdish diaspora. Now, I'll introduce you to our guest and my friend, David Hume Kennerly. For over 50 years, photojournalist David Hume Kennerly has provided an intimate view of politics and world events. At age 25, he became one of the youngest winners of the Pulitzer Prize in journalism. Kennedy's 1972 Pulitzer Award for feature photography included images of the Ali Frazier World Heavyweight Championship at Madison Square Garden, the wars in Vietnam and Cambodia, and East Pakistan refugees fleeing into India. 2 years later, Kennerly was appointed President Gerald Ford's chief White House photographer. His photos have appeared in dozens of magazines, including the cover of Time, Life, and Newsweek. Kennerly is the author of 7 books, including memoirs, collections of his work, and a 2014 how-to book that aims to democratize the thoughtful use of smartphone camera technology. Kennerly's photographs have been exhibited and collected by museums and public and private collectors internationally, and he has received numerous awards and honors, including Lucy Masters of Photography Award for Achievement in Photojournalism, Overseas Press Club's Olivier Rebaud Award for Best Photographic Reporting from Abroad, and the White House Press Photographer's First Place for Best Campaign Coverage. Following our conversation, we will open a Q&A to all of you. You're welcome to leave your questions in the feed on Facebook or YouTube, and at the end of the presentation, I will read your questions and David will answer. With that, we will begin the video that so perfectly encapsulates the depth and breadth of David's career as a photojournalist, produced by Red Thread Productions to mark our 2019 announcement that with the University of Arizona, the David Hume Kennerly Archive was to join the Center for Creative Photography's collection, and that was just 1 year ago.
For more than 50 years, David Hume Kennerly has documented history with his camera. His singular perspective and relentless determination have helped Kennerly create unforgettable images of the powerful and the powerless alike. The David Hume Kennerly Archive is unparalleled for its depth and breadth. It takes a sweeping look at history in the making, the people who made it, and some of the most important events of our times.
It all started with a cat, our family cat. I took a picture of her when I was 10 years old. That early photo got me excited about the idea of capturing what was going on around me. I was always dreaming about being somewhere other than where I was at the moment.
Howard Feynman, former Newsweek chief political correspondent, said, "Kennerly is as good as it gets in a craft he defined."
I was in Saigon when I got a telex from UPI headquarters. Kennerly has won the Pulitzer Prize for photography. Then in typical wire service fashion, added, "Need soonest comment." Vietnam was the biggest story of my generation. I felt an obligation to document the story that was killing so many of us. Every frame I took in Vietnam went straight to my heart. Now, I'm proud to be a photographer, and I'm fortunate to be one who went into war and came out alive. When I got back from Vietnam, Watergate was the big story. I took a picture of Gerald Ford that ended up on the cover of Time after Nixon picked him to replace Vice President Agnew, who had resigned. That led directly to me becoming the chief White House photographer.
Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev said Kennerly's work is more than just photography. It's history.
People ask if there's any world event that I regret not shooting. Of course, everything I missed, but it wasn't much. Every photographer, no matter what they do, provide a service, and that is to give insight into who we are and what makes us tick. You will find those secrets in the photographs.
Ansel Adams said, Kennerly sets forth a positive testimony that photography as a language can speak truth.
Journalists, photographers are the people who keep us informed. We're the truth tellers. My job is to show people what they don't want to see, and it's how they find out what's real. A great photo is one that makes you sit up and pay attention. There are certain pictures that you see that just never go out of your mind. I'm going to keep shooting until the day I die. I'll never stop being curious, and I'm never going to put down my camera. Hi. Now I don't have to show my photos, right?
No, you're not going to get out of this one. Thank you for being with us tonight. You know, I was reflecting on the fact that just 1 year ago, this week, actually, you were here on campus and we were celebrating the acquisition of your archive at the University of Arizona, and how important your photographs are to our interdisciplinary mission. They connect the Center for Creative Photography to units all over campus. And there was such joy that week. And the world has changed so much since then. Who would have predicted that we would not be in person tonight?
Well, I'm in person.
I'm glad you're in person. But, you know, one thing that is steadfast is that your collection really offers us the ability to go on a journey, and it's really timely right now. And I want to start off tonight and ask you to share some of your campaign photography, so we can then kind of dive deeper into having a larger conversation about the critical role of photography in presidential campaigns. What do you say?
I think I can do it. And also I want to add my thanks to Bank of America for sponsoring this event. I have so many friends there. I've been shooting for them. They're my main corporate client for over 10 years now. And thanks to Katie Knox, certainly, who I understand is tuning in. If she's not, well, she'll never know. And also thanks to Nick Kennerly for doing the music for my video. And in a little ironic twist, Savannah Guthrie, who did the voiceover, is doing the town hall tonight, competing with me, on NBC. So anyway, I'll forgive her. So I'm going to try to get my pictures up here for you. We can talk about the campaigns. I've been shooting them since. Hang on. See if I can overcome my ineptitude here. Here we go. Good. There it is. And we're going to allow that. Let's see if did you see that? You see
There
it
we
now?
go. I see it.
All right, all right. That's
All right.
way better than I did last time. So the good news is you don't have to look at me. You just look at photos. I've been photographing every presidential campaign since 1968, except for 72, when I took a break and went to Vietnam for 2 years. And so it's been yes, I took this famous picture of Abraham Lincoln. I know I don't look that old, but I'm starting off with this photo because this is by Matthew Brady of Abraham Lincoln. And this is Abraham Lincoln was the first president to really understand the power of photography. And this photograph was taken in his studio, Matthew Brady's studio I'm going to go right back for a sec, in New York, the day before his Cooper Union speech. And Lincoln told Brady that this photograph in his Cooper Union speech made him president. Now, they didn't reproduce photos back then, but they did woodcuts. So this is an exact replica of what the photo was. And so this is how people got to know Abraham Lincoln, through all these posters and billboards. And it really underscores the power of photography. And by the time Abraham Lincoln in 1860, photography was only like 22 years old. And at the turn of the century, Teddy Roosevelt was one of the more interesting and dynamic and certainly photogenic presidents. Here he is standing on a table talking to people during a campaign. And it flash forward to 1976. This is a picture I took of Gerald Ford, who's campaigning, standing on the roof of his car, probably to the chagrin of the Secret Service. And obviously the Kennedys were tailor-made for photography. This was a campaign picture taken by Jacques Lowe of the Kennedys, 1960, with Caroline. And they knew how they came across in photos. And there are so many great pictures of President Kennedy. And this is where I stepped into the picture. 1968, here in Los Angeles, Robert Kennedy campaigning in Watts. And somebody asked me the other day about how did he come across? Well, he really listened to people. This is an example of him also showing up in really one of the more difficult areas of LA. This is in Watts, African-American population. He was very comfortable in all situations, and he didn't just go to fundraisers in Beverly Hills. This photograph was taken 2 nights before Robert Kennedy was shot, and it was at the Ambassador Hotel in the Coconut Grove room. And this photo has never been published. It's part of my archive at Arizona, but the picture really resonates with me. It's almost got a religious feel to it. And then I was there when Robert Kennedy was shot. I was not in the room with him, but I'm going to skip those because they're hard for me to look at, quite frankly. And the winner that year was Richard Nixon. And this is a picture of Nixon and Spiro Agnew as vice president choice. This was after the Republican convention that was held in Miami. And I took this in San Clemente, where he'd gone to strategize about the upcoming campaign. And then we go forward to 1976. This is after one of the debates. Actually, it was supposed to be a debate tonight, but the President of the United States declined to meet virtually, like we're doing, and like everybody else on the planet is doing. So they're having town halls tonight. But this was the Jimmy Carter, Gerald R. Ford debate at the end. You can see Bob Dole back there with Susan Ford. But these are moments where, when I look back on it, I think he looked a little nervous. And Mrs. Ford, of course, was beaming in the background. President Ford campaigning in Texas. And then part of my job was really, as the White House photographer, I was appointed by President Ford, one of his first appointments, to document his presidency. And this was election day. in 1976, and he was at an unveiling of a mural of his family at Grand Rapids Airport. And he was really overcome with emotion. And part of my job as a photographer is not to, I certainly don't try to make people look good or bad, but to capture the moment. And this really, I look at it now and it makes me sad, really, for so many things, but I think it conveys in the photo. Jimmy Carter in 19 beat him for the presidency. And in 1980, he ran against Ronald Reagan, but he also ran against Ted Kennedy. This was at the Democrat convention in 1980. He and Teddy weren't having too much conversation that I noticed up there. And then John Anderson was the independent candidate, third-party candidate. He scored almost 7 percentage points, and his bumper sticker said a vote for him is a vote for him. Obviously, any third-party candidate who runs gets accused by one side or the other of taking away votes, which they do. And Ronald Reagan on the campaign trail, he'd been kissed by an admirer in a rope line, and one of his aides came over and said, "Mr. President, you have lipstick on." He says, "Oh, that's okay." I mean, he knew how he came across in pictures. This is a perfect example of that. George Herbert Walker Bush campaigning. And this was the year he lost to Bill Clinton. This is 1992. On a campaign stop was a train. And then Bill Clinton was one of the all-time hands-on great politicians. He, as you can see, this little kid is so happy to see him. Anytime you meet a president of the United States, it's a big deal. Well, maybe not for everybody. This is Hillary Clinton, First Lady Hillary Clinton, on a campaign bus with Gary Locke, who later became governor of Washington State. Clinton, and I remember the conversation, Clinton was telling him how he could win the election because Clinton had been governor of Arkansas, and he said, "You got to get the police out and the unions to vote for you." And I swear, it could have been a political primer. Now, Hillary Clinton obviously looks like she's heard this one maybe a couple of times. Doubts about Dole. This is my first Newsweek cover when they hired me to cover the 1996 campaign. Howard Feynman and I shared a credit on the front. And Bob Dole got so mad about this picture and basically accused me of trying to torpedo his campaign. When I ran into him, well, he ran into me, really. He was coming off an elevator in Manchester, and I was back waiting for him to go by, and hopefully he wasn't going to see me, but he saw me, and he came over and said that picture you took of me on the cover of Newsweek looks like I was dug up from the dead. And I said, "Other than that, how did you like it?" And that was not the right thing to say. And let's just say we never had a warm and friendly relationship after that. And standing next to me was Jean Kirkpatrick, who had been ambassador to the UN. And when he walked away, she said, "Well, I see you've made a real friend there." And this is the debate with Bob Dole and with Clinton. It was going to be a similar situation tonight, actually. It was supposed to be a town hall setting, not just the two candidates standing behind mics. And John McCain was the most delightful candidate I ever covered. I got to know him really well. And this is on a campaign bus in 2000, the first campaign. But he would sit in the back of the bus. It was nonstop press conferences. He loved talking to the press. He was not afraid of them. He was a big believer in the First Amendment. And I was really honored to get to know him. And the family asked me to be the photographer for his funeral. So I went through his last stages or his last trip from Phoenix back to Washington, D.C., and then to Annapolis. This is in Sedona. It was the backdrop for the concession in 2000 where he withdrew from the race. I remember the date. It was on my birthday in 2000, March 9th. And somebody said, "Oh, now this is how Ansel Adams would have covered the campaign." That was flattering. And getting an autograph from George W. Bush, who had a good sense of humor. This was on the campaign plane in 2000. And here he is alone, a pensive Bush. And I love getting those pictures no one else gets, of course. Al Gore campaigning against Bush. And then this is at the convention, the final night of the convention in Philadelphia. John Edwards and John Kerry. It's an amusing shot for me. Actually, one of my friends at Arizona wanted me to pull that one out. And here was before a debate with George W. Bush and John Kerry. And this was a photo op, which I didn't understand why they wanted to do this, but the campaign took the photographers out onto a boat to get he's parasailing, John Kerry, and he's a very active guy, but they turned around the Bush campaign because he would go back and forth. One of the great campaign ads of all time about how John Kerry was against this, so that it goes across, so that he says, but until he was for it, and he comes back into the frame. So in the great political moments, that was not a good one for him. Mitt Romney on his campaign bus, a very pensive moment. Romney and I are the exact same age. I pointed out to him that he was born 3 days after I was, in 1947. I said, but there's a huge difference between us. He kind of looked at me like, yeah. He said, well, you're a tribute to clean living, and I'm not. So he was amused. It's true. The Obama's second inauguration after he beat George Romney. This is the first photo I ever took of Donald Trump, and literally the first frame. It was in 2015 when he's running for president, and these were the Republican candidates. Look at that, Christie and John Kasich and everybody. There's Trump standing next to Jeb Bush. Everybody thought Bush was going to win. He had $100 million in his campaign fund, and it was almost like he was running in a parallel universe. I was then covering the Trump campaign. This is at the convention. If you look down below, that's a little mini Trump there against the screen. And here's how Republican men like to embrace, apparently. Hillary Clinton, the first woman to get a major party's nomination. This is in Philadelphia. And one of the debates. And a day that really, this is taken on October 28th of 2016. I had just joined up with the Clinton campaign 4 days earlier when I first saw her. And I've known Mrs. Clinton for many, many years. I first photographed her in 1974 when she was a lawyer on the Judiciary Committee impeaching Nixon. And I made trips with her as First Lady, covered her campaigning. She, like I and Romney, were all born in 1947. And when I saw her in New Hampshire, the first day I joined up with the campaign, she went out of her way to come over and say hello. And I said, how you doing? And she leaned over to me and she said, I wish the election was tomorrow. And she would have won. And here she is with Huma Abedin, who's her very close personal aide, on the plane from White Plains going to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This is the day that Director of the FBI, James Comey, announced that he was reopening the investigation into her emails. And this is a screen grab. That's me on the right, trying to get Hillary's attention when she comes off the plane. And then this is backstage. This is with her best friend growing up, Betsy Ebling. And Betsy just died last year, but she was right there with her when Mrs. Clinton got the news about this investigation, which was like it was a train wreck moment. And here she is coming out, waiting to go on stage at Cedar Rapids, and that's her aide with her. And I love photographing kids responding to candidates. It's such a great, it's civics living and breathing, and you can't beat it. This was at the rally there. And then at this point, Mrs. Clinton knows full well that this Comey thing's reopened. It was emails that were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, who was the estranged husband of Huma. But this is a sad photo if you're a Hillary fan. I mean, Madam POTUS, she would have been the first woman elected, and she was putting on a brave front here. And then afterwards, she did a press conference and talked about the FBI, the strange timing of opening this up. This is her, and then a close-up shot of her. And I really try to zero in on the people. I mean, I'm not being malicious about it, but you do get a sense of who they are. And then lock her up. I from there went to the Trump campaign and covered it. I was working with CNN. And this is the moment Donald Trump won the election, but in fact, he had really won it on October 28th. It just nobody knew it. And I was in the ballroom in New York City thinking full well, I'm going to watch Trump lose the election. This is him. That was about as happy as he looked. I think he was stunned by this event. Moving to the inauguration, there's Joe Biden on the left. And this could be a really interesting scene on January 20th. As Donald Trump likes to say, we'll see. And this year, even though the election this year has been truncated by the COVID virus, this was a debate between Bernie and Joe Biden in New Hampshire, and doing a selfie with the crowds. But here in this one little event, you get to see everything you need to know about Biden, about how he relates to people. And I've never shown this photo before, but it's a woman had come up to him after the rally and was talking about a relative, a close relative that she had lost, and was looking to Joe Biden to be consoled. And he did it. He has his head. This is a genuine moment. And in the same rally, this is where he was talking about his son, Beau, who had died, I think it was over 4 years before this. And you can see as a photographer, what I'm trying to show is trying to get through the facade of people. Everybody puts up a facade. We all do. But this was a painful moment, and I feel it even when I look at it right now. He was talking about Beau. Beau had died of cancer. He was an exemplary person. He had done service in Iraq. And watching that debate, the first debate, when he was talking about Beau and then was interrupted by President Trump about, well, what about Hunter and his drug problems? I mean, it was probably one of the worst moments I've ever witnessed in an American political event. And, you know, there are very few Beau Bidens out there, but we all know someone or have our own Hunter Bidens. And he really lost some ground by doing that. And you can bring it back up. That was it.
What a journey.
I think I ran out of breath.
No, that was amazing. Thank you.
Hold on, I'll stop there.
Are you good?
I don't want to, usually I do something like that and trying to do it right, and I cut myself away from the video feed. Anyway, that's the first time I've done this show, by the way. And when I ran across the Hillary pictures, I added a bunch of those because And if you go to Kennerly.com, the story about October 28th is on the front of my webpage.
Right.
And it was really brutal. And so in a way, I mean, I was there when Hillary lost, and I was there when Trump won the election in New York. And I definitely did not expect. I saw a poll that it was like October 18th that they were predicting Hillary by 91% to win that. And the Comey letter, the investigation was so close to the election, really torpedoed her campaign. And she was pressured about wishing it was going to be the next day on October 24th, because I'm sure she would have won. I mean, those were real numbers back then.
Well, I mean, I think that the series of those photographs really show the emotion. And it got me thinking that, you know, an image can change the way we look at politics. An image can change the way we look at politicians. So I'm hoping you can expand on how photography can help us understand the process of campaigns and also understand the character of the people campaigning.
Well, I think you saw it. I've been doing this for so long now. Like I think this is 55 years of being a news photographer, and I've never been one for cheap shots. I mean, I like when people are eating food. We all eat food. You look pictures of eating make you look stupid, really. And even though it's something we do every day, and but I like going for the character. This is what I'm aiming for. And you can see it with Biden, with Robert Kennedy. I was asked a question the other day about what was it about Robert Kennedy that I saw, and he was the first big-time politician I ever covered. Mm-hmm. And it was about listening to people and caring about people. It was real clear. He wasn't just doing it for a photo op. And one of the advantages that I would have is being backstage or in the room when things are really going on. That's when you get a better sense of people. When people are campaigning, you know, it's a show. It's like Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And what you see is what you get.
Right. How do you think that they help us remember campaigns? So when you look back on those photographs, what do they conjure for you?
For me, having been there, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty clear. I like some people better than others, and that's just like life. It's like the way it is. However, I treat everybody the same when it comes to pictures. I'm not trying to put my thumb on the photo scale there to make somebody look good or bad. But I think you do get a sense of these people through the photographs, and even that picture of Biden in a painful moment was in public. And you know, I don't know him that well. I've photographed him on and off for many years, and with Donald Trump, I don't know him very well, but I've been on his campaign and been yelled at by people as, you know, fake news and all that BS. But you know, I really like to think in many cases that you've gotten to know them. I just had a big show at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library. I was his chief White House photographer. I was a young guy when I got the job. I was 27. I was not even 30 when I left after he lost the election. But it was a really a powerful show to me, because it took a long time to put together. And I was asked by an interviewer, what do you want people to get out of this? And I wanted people to know Gerald Ford. When they started out at that and went through the whole all the galleries with the photos, when they emerged, I wanted them to have a sense of who that man was. Yeah. And he was somebody I admired very much, and a man who was as honest as the day is long. He was cared about people. He was one of those kind of folks. That's why he got into politics.
How did the two of you meet?
It was a blind date. I met him when I took the Time cover that you saw in the film. The picture, he was chosen by Nixon to replace Spiro Agnew. And I was assigned by Time to go up and take a photo of him before we knew who was going to get the nod. And I took that picture in his office, and he was warm and he was really nice. He said, "You're wasting your time." He didn't know. He didn't know he was going to get tagged by Nixon to be the vice president until later that night. And but he was great. And then I started covering him for Time, got to know him and Mrs. Ford really well, and the family. And it was a really personal attachment, but I was also viewing it with my professional detachment. I mean, but it all worked in. I took some pictures that were not good, very painful moments for them. And in the end, I got a nice letter, which I won't read, but it was saying that I basically showed them for who they were, and that was it.
You know, you've mentioned to me in the past that you had unfettered access to President Ford. Is that normal for a White House photographer to have that kind of access? I mean, you've even taken photographs of him in his pajamas, right?
Yes, and I never got kicked out of the room. The deal I had with him from day one was I reported to him, and I had full access to everything that was going on in the White House, and I also had a top secret clearance. But photographers are very tight-lipped people. We depend on access for getting these great moments behind the scenes, and if you're talking to the press or your fellow reporters about what you're hearing, you'll never get in there again. But he just let me. It was like the fox in the chicken coop, and nothing was out of bounds. And I was mainly shooting with black and white. It was to me a documentary job. I had other photographers who worked for me, and I mainly had them doing the receiving lines and stuff like that I didn't like doing, quite frankly. But it was a great reflection on him. And each president has their own view and relationship with the photographer. The first photographer was first civilian White House photographer was Yoichi Okamoto with LBJ. He had incredible access to me. To this day, he's the gold standard of presidential photographers. He did not have a close relationship with Johnson, but Johnson had a close relationship with history. And the idea of being documented was important to LBJ. Then came Nixon and Ollie Atkins. Ollie had very little access to Nixon. I've been through their archives and looked at them. It's a photographic disaster area. I mean, it's just nothing of importance was ever photographed behind the scenes. Nixon didn't want it. Then I came along, and Jimmy Carter didn't have a personal photographer. We thought that was all part of the imperial presidency that he ran against. Reagan had Mike Evans, who was a former New York Times guy. He had good access. Reagan's very private. George W. Bush, sort of modest access. Bill Clinton, Bob McNeely, who was really more like photos than the rest of them, frankly. Bob and I like doing black and white documentary stuff. And then he'd Susan with Obama. And Eric Bush, he did a great job, good access.
David, I'm going to stop you for a minute. We're having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Say one more thing, David.
Are you not hearing my
Okay. Can you pull out your mic a little bit?
Did that thing go off, or can you hear it now?
Maybe unplug it and plug it back in.
Oh, last time I did that, everything went to hell.
Okay, well, don't.
But you're not seeing anything, you're not hearing me at all?
There's a lot of static around your voice.
Okay. Well, this is why they call it virtual.
I know. It's 2020, right?
You know what I'll do? I'll unplug this and see if I can't, hopefully we just don't lose it. And maybe I'll pick it up.
That's much better. That's much better.
All right.
Okay.
We didn't lose it. Sorry about that.
You just said so many amazing things, and I didn't want anybody to miss them. I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but
we were talking about anyway. The question was about access for presidential photographers. Every photographer had a different relationship with the president. They're the boss, but also you have to include the first lady into that. Mrs. Ford gave me upstairs, downstairs access to them. Wasn't true of everybody, and you come to the president administration. And I have no idea what kind of access those photographers are getting. I haven't seen anything that rings my bell from behind the scenes. Yeah.
Can you tell everyone, David, what is life like for a photojournalist that's on the campaign trail? And 2020 aside, have you noticed changes to that journey over the years?
Well, going back, you saw the picture of Teddy Roosevelt campaigning on a table and see Gerald Ford standing on top of a car. But the actual campaigning and events and all that are not extraordinarily different. I think the Nixon administration they were run by people who were really conscious of his image and all that, and they had these elaborate stages of events. I think during the Nixon time was probably the modern, like staged events, really carefully managed events. And yes, right now it's a totally different scene because it's tight pool coverage. The Democrats are doing it right because they're not having giant crowds of people infecting one another out there. And but Joe Biden gets ridiculed for saying, well, there was nobody at his rally, that coming from the
do the photographers, do they travel with the candidates? Do they, how do they compete for access? How do you get that photograph? How does that work?
Yeah, so normally there would be, like in Hillary's campaign in 2016, the back of the plane was reserved for press people, reporters, photographers. It wasn't a large group. Trump didn't have press people on his airplane. There was a press plane that was a separate, that would leap ahead and land and then get him when he came in and all that. It just depends on how big the campaign is. Now it's all pool coverage, like very minimal coverage. Wire services, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They're all different. I mean, it also depends on like how they're traveling. Like early on in the New Hampshire primaries and all that, they come, they drive, they take buses. So generally, the press has pretty good access to candidates because it's free publicity. Sure. I mean, Trump definitely knew that.
Now, have you noticed changes in campaign photography with the rise of social media?
Yes, because, and I think might have even been Barack Obama was the first president of the 21st century to be putting out pictures taken with iPhones, having the campaign photographer. They use Flickr. In fact, I think there's like even a White House Flickr account now. That is way different. So they would be pumping pictures out, the candidate meeting with all these different people, really having their own narrative. But before digital, it was stuff being released or mainly the news photographers covering it themselves.
Right.
Which was always my preference as a White House photographer, that I didn't like releasing photos.
So in 2020, how have the circumstances surrounding COVID-19 changed the presidential campaign trail for you personally and for other photojournalists who would, more broadly?
Well, for me, I had it noted in my calendar recently. I haven't been on an airplane in 7.5 months. I've covered all these wars. I've managed to avoid death, and I didn't want to do something stupid by getting out there. I mean, I just don't. It changes the complexion of everything, I mean, it's difficult on one hand, but on the other hand, it's everybody's in the same boat. But there are photographers out there working, and they take precautions. You see them on TV. You don't see one photographer out there without a mask on.
Right.
It's changed everything. I mean, the way the campaigns are run. I mean, the fact that Trump wouldn't debate Biden virtually was really kind of strange to me, because you're still getting the big crowds, the big audiences, but
Right.
no, it's different. Everything's changed. Yeah.
Right. Now, David, you mentioned seeing an image by Joshua Arandi that resonated with you, having uniquely captured the global pandemic in a single frame.
Yes.
And I think you have a copy of this photograph.
I do, but I'm going to have to go back through the hoops to get it. Maybe, can we see if
maybe Meg can bring it up?
But Meg might have it.
Yeah, if Meg can bring it up, I'd love for you to talk through the image with us and tell us, why it struck you more than perhaps other images in the last several months. Here we go.
Okay, good. You can just leave it there.
Can you tell us about
this? Everybody can see this, okay? I mean, you don't need it blown up. But I did a interview with the Columbia Journalism Review. They talked to me and to 3 other Vietnam photographers, asking us about coverage of the COVID-19 situation. And I told her that, in my estimation, there had not been like a show-stopping photo made of it. And like Eddie Adams in Vietnam shooting the guy getting shot in the head, or Nick Witt's picture of a little girl running down the road, Joe Rosenthal, Iwo Jima. There was no Iwo Jima photo made. This is the closest thing I've seen to it. And I talked to the reporter before the story closed, and I said, I take it back. I've seen the photo. This is a dead human being in a hospital in Jakarta. Joshua Arwande took it. He was on assignment for National Geographic, and everything about this photo tells us the isolation, like a saran wrapped person, like trying to prevent the disease from getting away. The person's alone. So many people have died in this country alone, without families for fear of them being infected. And this picture really did it to me. It could be like King Tut. It could be, but symbolically, this is the best single frame of COVID-19 so far. And there are a lot of good photographers out there documenting it. But one of my points was, you look at people who are the doctors, the patients, everybody's behind masks or plastic or protective gear, and it's very hard to get to the human emotion there, and that reflects that there is no human emotion. It's a dead person, but look at him. I mean, it's a symbol of loneliness. It's a symbol of this horrible plague. Affecting every single person. Everybody listening right now is affected by it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to start to take some questions from the public. But before we do that, I want to ask you one final question on my end. And that is, what advice do you have for the students and aspiring photojournalists out there?
Well, I think it's a tough time to come into the business. I feel really bad about the kids just starting school and or not. In many cases, we have Rebecca, our youngest son, just graduated from college, and there was no graduation, and he was cool about it because he said everybody else is in the same boat. But look at all the things that we're missing. I mean, or they're missing. I feel worse for them than for anybody. But for photographers coming in, look, if you can't tell, I still have a certain passion for what I do, and I really would never discourage anybody from not doing it. And because you can put your own stuff out online on your Facebook page, although I'm now dating myself by saying that, you can have your own channels of getting people to see your pictures of it. I wasn't able to do that back then. So I think it takes ingenuity and it takes perseverance, but
and stamina, obviously.
Taking photos, that's the best thing I can say. I mean, don't stop. We need photographers.
Absolutely. Well said. All right. I think Meg is behind the scenes, and she's going to start giving us some questions, and I'll read them, and then we can have a go. They'll show up here on the bottom of our screen.
Really hard questions. I mean,
yeah. Well, you know,
I'm going to need help.
We'll take it.
By the way, just so we take a break. This is young James, who just graduated from Berkeley.
Hello, James. Family
Nick,
photo cut.
USC as a musician, and then Byron. Byron, world traveling.
All right.
Travel writer.
Okay, this question is from Jay Talbot. Good evening, David. Your Vietnam War photos still are amazing. How come so many great photographers seem to come out of that experience?
Well, I could also look at it the other way. There were a lot of really good ones who didn't come out of that experience. You were getting shot at. You couldn't. There are great moments to be made in war, but like most people don't want to be there for them. And I think it really, for me, it changed my life. Certainly, I was there for 2 years as a combat photographer for UPI, then Life magazine, and then Time. But it's kind of a tough question because I think good photographers went there to begin with, and they came back better if they came back. And it was the kind of experience where you really, as it said in that video, like every picture I would take would go to my heart because people are dying out there and or being horribly affected by war. And I don't know one pro-war photographer, that's for sure. Like military people, nobody wants to be in a war. And it was a character builder, and it, in many cases, people made their mark out there because they took pictures that we remember.
Right. All right.
That may not be a great ansr, but it's the best thing to do.
No, I mean,
right.
it's a very weighted.
Let me add one other thing to that.
Sure.
I'll get back into my attacks on the First Amendment by who back there. But a lot of photographers died in Vietnam and every war we've had, in Syria, in Lebanon, and everywhere, to try to tell the story. The whole point is to tell the story, to go places no one wants to go or should go, but needs to see what's going on. But in Vietnam, we were welcomed by the soldiers. They knew we didn't have to be there. They'd always say, "You don't have to be there. You don't have to be here." And I said, "No." They said, "Wow, if I didn't have to be here, I wouldn't even be here." And so that was a very common refrain. But they liked the idea that photographers were coming in to tell their stories, to show what they were doing to the world out there, that people back home, like we were a representative of the American people coming to tell their story, and we did it voluntarily. And,
and it shows how photographs can, alter history. I mean, Absolutely.
Their history, but it's like one soldier at a time for me, and I was glad to do it. And everybody, when you look back on the Vietnam War, there's a lot. Well, the press cost. That's what cost America winning the war. It wasn't. It was like bad political decisions. Period. No, we weren't sending people over there, and they were. All of a sudden, you start photographing people, soldiers coming back in boxes, and that has a real negative effect on the population.
Absolutely.
And so it wasn't the fact the press was telling the story; it was the story they were telling.
The story itself.
Yes, and that was the plain fact.
Well, thank you for that. All right, Meg, here we go. We have a question from the Center for Creative Photography from CCP member Joe P. You worked with some of the best photo editors in the world. Are you editing your own work? Of all the editors, who would you pick to edit your work?
Well, one of the problems in the digital era is that editors are being like given short shrift or laid off. The good picture editors won me the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, I took the photos, but somebody had to pick them. And being an editor is a really hard job. And the best editors were people I found, the ones I worked with, who didn't want to be a photographer. They loved looking at other people's pictures. And the one best editor, that's a really unfair question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Because I worked with so many great editors, like Sandra Isert was my editor at the White House, and Arnold Drapkin and John Derniak, and on and on and on. But if I had to pick one, it was Larry DeSantis, who was UPI's chief picture editor. He was the guy who really taught me the ropes about photography in terms of you don't overshoot. And he threw negatives at me when he didn't like my pictures. I mean, you couldn't get away with that these days. We didn't have human resources back then. That would have been a no-no. But Larry DeSantis, with his cigar and his loupe looking at my pictures, never missed a frame. Wow. And I lament the end of great picture editors, even though there are some for sure, but mainly, and the other part of the question was, we're out when you go out on an assignment, you see it all, like Doug Mills, New York Times. They shoot and then they're there with their editing pictures right on the spot and putting them up. And it's a tough way to do it. And you're not always going to pick the best ones. Like writers, photographers need good picture editors.
Yeah, editors are wonderful. All right, we're going to take two more questions. The time has just flown by, but it's been fantastic. We have one here from CCP member Dylan B. Are there any female photojournalists that you have worked with and have admired their work?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, the best photographers on the planet are women. And it goes back to early on when I first started, there were very few women in the business, but they were coming along, and now I would say half of the professional photographers in the news business have got to be women. Carol Guzzi, best photographer on the face of the earth. She's a 4-time Pulitzer Prize winner, a former nurse who has just taken incredible risks with her life. Even recently, it was over in the Middle East, and she is hands down the best photographer I know, and that is no disrespect to a lot of others. Carolyn Cole works for the LA Times, another Pulitzer winner. Just on and on and on. And look back to Margaret Burke-White, whom I didn't know, but was an early photographer working with Life magazine. The business is filled with great women photographers, and I'm really glad about that.
Super. All right. Our last question here, if I'm correct, from CCP member Kim P. Do you feel it's important for a photographer to remain on the outside to maintain the integrity of telling the story?
On the outside, well, I mean, it's a really good question. If you look at my relationship with President Ford and all that, obviously I went on the inside, but I became a member of the White House staff. I wasn't working as a news guy doing that. Yeah, I think objectivity is really important. I think it's important to look at everything going on, and it's photographers make friends, and it's like it's a really great question. It's a really tough thing to answer because I've known a lot of people like John McCain on the campaign trail, and of course Ford, but I did go to work for him. But really, my attitude about it was, and I can only speak for myself, is that whatever I was doing, no matter how much I liked people or didn't like them, going back to what I said earlier, I have tried to remain objective and tell the story no matter what I feel about people. I think it's possible to do it. And so it's hard to be detached. But on the other hand, I learned it from guys like Larry DeSantis, who said, look, you're out there photographing the world and how the stories unfold. And but we all get involved in it. We're humans. Human beings are not by nature objective. So, but great question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, wow. What an incredible evening. Thank you, as always, for sharing these incredible images with us, David. Your journey, especially the timing right now, as we're in the midst of a campaign, seeing these images, seeing this journey through time, it's been a real pleasure. I hope you know how excited we are to have you as an archive artist here, having you work with students, having your archive for the public to enjoy, for our students to enjoy. And I'm always very grateful. I want to thank you. I want to thank Bank of America, Adriana. Thank you for sponsoring this incredible event tonight. And thank you to everybody who came and participated and watched us. And I am looking forward to the day when we can gather again and be together in person and enjoy some more. So thank you and good night to everybody.
Bye-bye.